Good morning, everybody. What a wonderful day and what a beautiful group we have today. I appreciate everybody who came, and we also welcome everybody who is watching us online today. We are getting into this new setting when we know that behind us there are hundreds of other people who watch our service, and the number that we saw on Friday, because people continued watching. That was really amazing, and we shared with each other with the numbers that were growing. So I report today, it was 735 people watching us online. And as I told Shirley Twombly and to our trustees and to our worship, we call it the worship production team, that was a true teamwork, because without the sound, people were getting frustrated. They could not watch us. They could not hear the message. They could not hear the music. And the picture was blurred. So we got the better camera. Twombly's family gave us this memorial fund to improve the sound in the sanctuary. We've learned a lot about sound and the picture. But the main thing we've learned, the teamwork, does matter even more now during COVID time than ever before. So I appreciate you being here. Today we will be talking about kindness. Kindness, such a casual word that we use every day maybe, but do we truly know what kindness means? And just like the patience that we talked about last Sunday, seems like a very simple, very ordinary word. And sometimes it's even irritating that people demand, and we demand from children to be patient. So today, in a similar way, we will be talking about kindness. And I invite you today to hear the word of God. Let us worship God.
Falling by the way, just stop and say, you're going the wrong way. You got to try a little kindness. Just show a little kindness. Shine a light for everyone to see. And if you try the blindness of narrow-minded people on the narrow-minded streets. Don't walk around the down and out. Lend a helping hand instead of doubt. And the kindness that you show every day will help someone along the way. You got to try a little kindness. Just show a little kindness. Shine a light on everyone to see. If you try a little kindness, then you overlook the blindness of narrow-minded people on the narrow-minded street.
Good morning. The 204th Missouri Annual Conference was a conference like no other. Bishop Farr called the meeting to order yesterday morning at 10 o'clock, and what we usually do in 3 days, we did in 135 minutes. So you can tell that was quite a difference. But you know, I think it was a very good conference in spite of that fact. It was called Kingdom, and that was a theme, Kingdom, and I don't want you to think I forgot the G whenever you see my comments in the newsletter in September. It is Kingdom. It's kin because we are all related, because we're all followers of Christ, and we're in that same family of Christian believers. The N in Kingdom was in a different color, and that N was because we are trying to include everyone, we're trying to inspire others, and we're trying to invite them to join us. And then the DOM, D-O-M, it had concentric circles going around it because what we do as Christians has a ripple effect, and we don't really know all the good that we do. We can't see it always in our own time, but what we do as Christians makes a difference, and so that was important. When Bishop Farr made his comments, he spoke on Acts 2, and you may remember that's when the Holy Spirit sends down those fingers of fire on the followers, and then they were able to speak in different languages. He says this is so very important because we have to reach out into our community. We can't be the church inside this building totally right now. We have to find a mission outside of our own church. And this is why I'm so very excited about our online services. And I thank Lydia for that because she's made such a difference in being tenacious and working on that service and trying to get it better. She really has done an amazing job. The other thing that I'd like to just mention to you is that at conference we were given 2 books. The first one was White Fragility, and of course it's talking about racism. The second book was called Come Back, because all of us experience loss and failure or tragedy in our lives, and this was a kind of a blueprint on how to come back after you face those difficult times. I wanted to tell you that if anyone was interested in doing a small group study about either of these books, just let the office know, and Jennifer we'll set up some kind of a learning experience. It might be an online class, it might be go to the park and talk about the book, but if anyone has any interest in doing that, we would love to have some small group studies that would cover that. The other thing that I want to let you know, just in closing, there'll be more comments in the newsletter. If you want to know about annual conference, check it out. I'll have an article in there so you'll know more about it. But I want to just mention very briefly, we had our Wednesday nature walk last week, our first one, and it was just marvelous. We had such a great time just being in nature and fellowshipping with one another at a distance, but it was just a wonderful time. We'll do another one of those at 9 o'clock on Wednesday, and we plan to go to the shelter on the upper part of Krug Park so that maybe we can include a few more people that might have trouble walking with us. Also, don't forget our Saturday Night Live coping group. Lydia and Scott worked so hard on that to perfect the sound last night. I think we're good to go now, so that's another experience that you can have. And then there is a youth gathering on the 29th at 5 p.m. The last thing I'll say, because I'm talking longer than I meant to, just for you to know, it is Lydia's birthday. And you know, I so want to just belt out happy birthday to you, and I know we're not supposed to sing, but after the service, be sure you wish her a happy birthday. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. If you'll follow along with the call of worship, join me. In loving kindness, Jesus came. And from the depths of sin and shame, And would you join me in the opening prayer? Tender Jesus, so meek, so mild, teach us to be like you in all our ways. Teach us kindness, gentleness, generosity, and to be giving, forgiving, loving, and caring. Teach us to follow in your humble footsteps. Guide us to the place you want us to be. Take control, mold and shape us into the brilliant beings we are always destined to be. The scripture reading today is Colossians 3:12 through 14. Therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Bear with each other and forgive one another if any of you has a grievance against someone. Forgive as the Lord forgave you, and over all these virtues put on love, which binds them all together in perfect unity.
As you know, in July I visited my son and his wife in Minnesota. And when we visit our children, we always talk about their life as well as they ask about ours. And that is the most precious time when we spend time with the family. And of course, since many of us have grown-up children, they already have jobs. And gradually our conversation started on my son Pavel's job. And he talked with excitement about many people, and suddenly his face got too serious for the moment, kind of saddened. And he said, everything is good, but one person, one of the directors, and he's one of the directors too, he has his own team, she is yelling at everybody when we have meetings online. And I was surprised. I said, why don't you just stop it and say it is not appropriate, or maybe even mirror the attitude. He says, I'm not that person who is mirroring anger and incivility, and I agree. Neither of us will do that. So the problem that my son saw in his job setting was he even started considering leaving just because of one person who treated others in such inhumane way. And I said, just leave. Just find another place. There are plenty of companies, and with your talent, you will not have any problem to find a job. He says, I know that. But he says, what really keeps me in this company is my boss. She is a very kind person. Imagine, out of all the qualities that this person has, my son really appreciated just one, kindness. He says, I can find many companies, but I will never find a boss who is so kind and attentive and always supportive and encouraging and always goes an extra mile for each employee, not just for my son. And that made me think about today's topic, kindness. Kindness. What is kindness? And since we talked about kindness with my son, imagine a 35 years old young man who is so well educated and trained, really made me happy that the key priority for him in choosing relationships, in choosing even a job, is kindness. Because what he says, imagine the morale of our organization is poisoned. What if my subordinates now will adopt that style and they will start acting like that? And he said in horror, he says, what if one day I become like that? Interesting. And I said, why other people do not resist? And that's the problem I want to address today. So today I want to address a few things. First of all, what is kindness? And I would rather start what kindness is not. And what kindness is not is actually hatred, violence, animosity, bitterness, barbarousness, thoughtlessness, indifference, harshness, indecency, selfishness, mercilessness, hostility, intolerance, cruelty, and ill will. Did you ever think about what kindness is not? But do we see lots of it around us? Why is that when we know that kindness is so important, at the same time all we hear on the news and read in social media, it's all murders, violence, rape, hatred, riots, fires are started, buildings are demolished. So hatred seems like prevailing in our lifetime. But is it? It is very important to understand that what we see in the news and what we read in the social media is actually an exception. Did you ever think about that? Did you ever think that the word news actually means something happened? It's new. It's new. But it does not mean it is accepted. It does not mean that it is more than what we have in our lives. But the study shows that the ratio between negativity and hatred on social media and very good comments about kindness, about good acts of goodwill are 17-1. Did you know that? That we read 17 times more about hatred and violence and hostility than we read about kindness. I think this is a very interesting information for us to understand, and it's a piece of assurance that humanity is not that bad. We just need to remember that this is the news. This is what happened, and somehow because people like to read that, they kind of gravitate to read the bad news, and this is how we are raised. This is how we are trained. Our eyes are trained, and we are seeking in a way, we are getting addicted to bad news because it keeps us scared. It keeps us believing that we cannot do anything. And so today I wanted to talk about what kindness is and why in the Bible we have so many references to kindness. So whatever you wish that others would do to you, first of all in Matthew 7 we read, do also to them. That's our principle. I want to be treated in a way that I treat others. And if we remember that principle and practice it always, then what happens, what we read in 1 Corinthians is love is patient and kind. Patient and kind. And we talked about patience last Sunday, and now we talked about kindness. So love is patient and kind. So if we are loving people, and trust me, there are more loving people in this world than those people who radiate hatred and distrust. And in Ephesians 4 we read, be kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another as God forgave you. Very very familiar for many of us. And for those who watch us and maybe do not know these verses, I invite you to trust the word of the Lord, that kindness is key. Kindness is key to good relationships, to better life, and to something that we really worry about during this time of COVID. Did you ever know that the act of kindness that we perform produces within us two hormones that people are seeking by taking medicine, oxytocin and serotonin? Did you know that when you perform the act of kindness, your body produces those hormones and you become much happier? But it's not even being just happy, because health is not just about feeling good. Health is actually has manifestations that we cannot miss in our lives, like rapid heartbeat, blood pressure, fever, and also anxiety, depression. And so Oxytocin takes care of our heart health. So the more we do and perform kindness, the healthier our heart is. And the more we show kindness to another person, the less anxious we become. And it is both ways, because when people give us kindness and show us kindness, it's kind of mutual. Both people benefit. Both people produce oxytocin and serotonin and become healthier. Isn't it a great solution for this world? If everybody will be sharing and we will see this kindness flowing all the time, then we will not see as much violence as we see now. I remember when I became a minister back in Russia so many years ago, that makes me feel like I'm ancient now. The first book that I could find, the Christian writing, since I just received my first Bible that I could not read, I could not understand. But then I went to the bookstore, and of course Christian bookshelf was practically empty at that time. But the book I found was very thick, and it had a very interesting name, the Bratolubie, which actually means loving kindness. It's philokalia in Greek, meaning that this is a collection of stories of people who practiced asceticism and people who practice stoicism and people who practice love toward others, monks. And it was written in the from the 4th to the 7th century of New Era. Imagine people even at the time of violence and persecution, they found out that kindness is key. Kindness is something that puts them above hatred, something that makes them healthier and stronger. And so today, I want to ask you a few questions. We already realized and defined what kindness is not. But in today's message that came from Paul's letter to Colossians, we read these verses that we just heard, but there are also a few verses that are very important that came before and after these verses. So we've read it as God chosen ones, holy and beloved. Clothe yourself with compassion, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience. Back to patience. But also before that, we read this word, put to death, therefore. So what does it mean to take it off? Easy to say, right? How do we take off something that is us? And that's what Paul describes it as, put to death, therefore, whatever in you is earthly. I invite you today to think, what is in you that is earthly? And for each person, it might be something different. Fornication, he starts his list, impurity, passion, evil desire, and greed. On account of this, the wrath of God is coming on those who are disobedient. There are the ways you also once followed when you were living that life. But now, Paul says this is what we need to put on. You know, it's like changing clothes. It is something that we wore for a long time, and we forgot that these clothes deteriorated, and it's unpleasant, maybe even stinky. And we people like to have new clothes. What a good idea. What a good approach Paul found to people to change their clothes. What we wear, what we have on our faces, what we produce when we speak, our emotions. So how do we act among others? And so he says, put on, as God chosen ones, love, compassion, and kindness. So what a switch, what an invitation. But again, what is kindness? And so I found a few interesting things, and I decided to invite you today to actually learn from children. Because now, at this time with Corona, and also I think even before, teachers try to find a way to start very early, to train children to act differently. And so in this study that I found is very interesting that these scientists, researchers working with children from kindergarten age up to 7th grade, they asked children, those who could not write yet well, to draw a picture of kindness. How do they understand kindness? And of course, all the children were asked, like adolescents, teenagers, were asked to write. How do they understand kindness? And I thought, what an interesting exercise that we can actually also try. But when you are an educator, I think you will get an idea in your class how to practice kindness every day. And so in this study, children drew either pictures, as I said, or they wrote. And even small children wrote something interesting that scientists divided in 4 categories. One of them is self-control. Believe it or not, even young children know the word self-control. But I think as adults, if we do not consistently practice this quality with children, then imagine what kind of clothes they will be wearing when they become adults. So children wrote, and it's very interesting, little children wrote, for example, not leaving clothes on the floor. And that's an act of kindness, but it is a self-control. The act of kindness toward the mother who will have to pick it up from the floor, but it is also a kindness to yourself because you worked on something that is important for your future. And another quality, another lesson that children actually displayed on their own, scientists called self-regulations or self-governing. And this is what it is. Children wrote, and this is of course more like teenagers who are able to analyze themselves, to understand themselves better. They wrote, not asking for too much stuff. Interesting, right? Because we are in this society that is so obsessed with consumerism. And imagine if one of the teenagers suddenly realized, I can perform this act of kindness toward my parents, just simply not asking for too much. That's a big thing, big discovery for this child. And then another quality of kindness is self-restraint. How can we self-restrain ourselves in this life? If children write, don't punch your little brother, that's a very good self-restraining skill and very easy to maybe practice, I hope. But so if we apply to our adult life, self-restraining, what does that mean? Because when we have fighting out on the street, when we have shooting in this community, when it is all over the nation, then self-restraint, I think, is a very important skill to practice kindness, if we even approach this situation from the value of kindness. And then all the kids also wrote that maybe that it means for us, and of course this is, you need to be more mature to write something like this. For example, to leave coins in a vending machine for the following person. Or maybe checking on the neighbor and offering to pick up groceries and leaving it at the door during this time. And some teenagers wrote that, we can sew, we can make masks for people in the community who don't have means or do not know how to sew. But what was very important that teenagers shared, I want to read that. They shared that not laughing at a joke or insult if it causes someone around them to suffer. You see, that's what we do. It's funny sometimes just to, somebody cracks a joke and here we are laughing. And only later when we start thinking, then we feel uncomfortable, like, why did I do that? Why did I laugh? And so that's one of the ways to show kindness. And we are learning about this from teenagers. And then also, they talk about self-regulation. That self-regulation is becoming a very hot topic for educators now. Because you know how in school even teachers sometimes lose their temper. And they show anger and they show their displeasure, forgetting that we are setting up an example for those who are around us, and especially children, because children are observing. And so today, I wanted to bring up 4 important ways of showing kindness. So we talked about that kindness is actually very good for our health. We talked about kindness that improves even our immune system the more we practice that. But what we did not talk about, that what is kindness to begin with? Is it a feeling? Is it an emotion? Actually, it is an emotion. But remember how I talked how quick and short is emotion. It's only 90 seconds. And so that's a key. Somehow we dwell on our negative emotions, sometimes for years. Anger, unforgiveness, fear. We live in fear for years. And I hope this coronavirus time will not plant within us that seed of distrust to other human beings, that we will have everybody this sort of PTSD when it will be all over, that we will be afraid to touch another person, to hug another person, to kiss gently another person like we used to. It is all gone. And I hope it will pass, because it is an emotion, but it is a positive emotion that we all need to have in our life. And as I said, it is also mutual. So what is the definition of kindness? Kindness is sometimes viewed as something naive or weak. Being kind is actually being courageous, being brave, because being kind in this world, I think, requires so much strength that in spite of all the insults and humiliation sometimes, we do not lose it. We do not lose that love for humanity, love for another human being, that we want to continue being kind. I want you to think about it for a minute. How hard it is for us to practice kindness. How costly is kindness? It's free, but isn't it hard to practice it every day? Sometimes because we also don't want to appear vulnerable. We do not want to display that message about ourselves that, oh, I'm so kind, just use me, or walk all over me, and we restrain ourselves. And that's not a good place to be. So if you're sometimes burned to the ground in your life, don't lose that gift. Be kind. Because the more people radiate kindness, forgiveness, show compassion, that energy within us will change. Because if I change my world, and you, Carl, change your world, and everybody here changes your world and fill it with kindness, and if we radiate this message into the world, then imagine the world will change. And maybe some people will say, oh, Lydia, you're naive. I am. But I think it's a strong skill. Regardless of what is happening to you in your life, continue hoping, continue trusting, continue believing in people, and I think only then we will see the whole world around us changing. And so then we talked about how love is about self-restraining, how we restrain our anger, how we restrain our distrust, how we continue growing in just radiating this kindness. But also remember that we are surrounded with this ratio of negativity and positivity in our life as 17 to 1. And when we read all these messages on social media, it's scary. And it's very natural for people to kind of restrain, to start thinking about it's safer this way not to be kind. But kindness is key. So what is the definition of kindness? Being kind often requires courage and strength. Kindness without drawing attention to the initiator or unannounced to the recipient. And I have so many examples in our church when people show kindness without ever wanting to be acknowledged. Giving, serving, loving, doing things for the community that sometimes disappoints us and many people, but we never stop. Because it is something in our Christian character, in our Christian personality, that is resilience. We have this strong resilience, and when we radiate kindness, and we see kindness multiply, even when one or two people turn us down, or laugh at us, or mock us because we're Christians and we just seem like allow other people to do whatever with us, no. We radiate strength and courage, showing that in spite of anything, and especially during this time, we are people of kindness. So I remember how my mom taught me when I was a little girl, and she was a literature teacher. Of course, she had all the time quotes. We actually now follow my mother, who is 86, and we tried to write all her quotes at what we used to laugh, because it was not a single phrase she would say without quoting something. Naturally, she is a teacher. She is a literature teacher and the Russian language teacher. So at one point we felt so tired from her just quoting. I remember I even said, Mom, can you just speak normal without these quotes? But no, she can't. And so one time she says, kindness should have fists. And that was kind of a strange image. How could kindness have fists? But what it means that we need to defend that gift of kindness that we have, not allowing other people to abuse that, but never getting disappointed. I wanted to remind you that kindness also have different revelation and manifestations. So kindness is how you treat other people. Kindness is also how you relate to those people who are not your close family. But also, kindness is how you treat yourself. And with that kindness, I realize that sometimes, because especially Jesus says, love your neighbor as you love yourself, remember that principle, that sometimes we just completely either ignore or we mess it up. Because we forget that, first of all, we need to start with who we are. And when we talk about definitions and the types of kindness, so types, be kind to your family, be kind to those who are around you, but also be kind to yourself. And what I realized at this time, that it is most significant time right now during coronavirus to be kind to yourself. And without that, we cannot show kindness to other people. And when I decided that I will just renovate my backyard, last Thursday, I thought, okay, the day is over and I'm just ready to pull my sleeves up, though it's hot anyway. And so I decided I will just go and work on my garden. And carrying these bricks, and carrying this heavy, that I thought I can handle. You know, when you work in your garden, you lose a track of time and sense of reality. And sometimes this is how we live, because we get so energized by certain ideas. I wanted to remind you that kindness also have different revelation and manifestations. So kindness is how you treat other people. Kindness is also how you relate to those people who are not your close family. But also, kindness is how you treat yourself. And with that kindness, I realize that sometimes, because especially Jesus says, love your neighbor as you love yourself, remember that principle, that sometimes we just completely either ignore or we mess it up. Because we forget that, first of all, we need to start with who we are. And when we talk about definitions and the types of kindness, so types, be kind to your family, be kind to those who are around you, but also be kind to yourself. And what I realized at this time, that it is most significant time right now during coronavirus to be kind to yourself. And without that, we cannot show kindness to other people. And so when we approach our life, whatever we do, we need to also start with ourselves. Practice kindness toward ourselves. Take it easy when we can, but also observing other people's kindness. So when we get out of commission ourselves by doing too much, or we start losing trust in people, or we start disbelieving even in God because life treated us unkindly, one of the ways to restore that depleted well of health and well-being within us is simply by observing other people's kindness. And there's a wonderful woman in this nation who is actually a Buddhist nun. She believes that compassion for others begins with kindness toward yourself. And I want to encourage all of you who are our church members, who watch us today online, be kind to yourself. Because we cannot be kind to others unless we practice kindness toward ourselves. So working on those bricks, I realized I lost that sense of reality. I carried too many bricks, and so then my heartbeat became so rapid that I actually had to slow down and lose the whole day that I could enjoy. So since I started on Thursday night, on Friday, which is my day off, I was completely out of commission, struggling with my heartbeat and trying to manage it. And I remember many years ago, my wonderful friend Jean Bush, who was from the Bush family, that canned meat company. She gave me the book, The Prophet. And that book is written by Gibran, which is, this man is a Muslim. So today when we talk about kindness, I wanted to remind to you that this quality is not only Christian quality. This quality is something so important in the lives of humanity that if each of us start generating more kindness, I can change my world by being kinder. You can change your world by practicing kindness. And imagine if each person in this universe, on this planet, will start practicing a little more kindness. Do you think we can change the world? The book Prophet, I invite you to read that, because it shows about that the whole gift that I received from my friend Jean Bush was an act of kindness. But little did I know that how much I will get from that writing about the importance of observing other people. So if she wrote in this book is, I have learned silence from talkative, toleration from the intolerant, and kindness from the unkind. Yet strange, I'm ungrateful to those teachers. And also Kahil Gibran, who is a Muslim writer, a storyteller, who died from typhus. He wrote that these words. I'm ungrateful to those teachers from whom I've learned silence and kindness, and to be grateful. Because too many times in our life we face what he is describing: unkindness, intolerance. And if we trust ourselves and we start with ourselves and we remember that we need to treat others as we want to be treated, then this kindness will change our world and also the world of others. And the name of this author, actually, Kahil Gibran, means Jabara in Arabic, which means actually to restore, to bring unequal parts to unity, to comfort, to console, to restore harmony, and to assuage the bruised or injured body, heart, and soul. Imagine the meaning of the name of the author, who died at the age of 48. And that book that my friend gave to me, and she is gone for many years now, always when I open this small book, I remember that this prophet died himself, but he left such inheritance to us that we need to remember to show act of kindness. And that's why kindness is repeated in the Bible so many times. A few weeks ago, I got a call from the police. And the officers named me, and he says, "We want you to come to the police department." So I came to the police department not knowing what happened, and he says, "We found your purse." I have a small purse inside of my larger purse, and somehow I dropped it. He said, "Somebody found it on Ashland Avenue and took it to my office." And imagine the officer took the time to find this strange person who dropped her purse in the God knows where. But also I think about that person, man or woman, who found that wallet and took it to the police department but never opened, because otherwise they will know my address and my name. And I thought, the act of kindness can be seen everywhere. And when we talked about those hormones, about oxytocin and endorphins, and we talked about serotonin, we think that only by giving kindness and by receiving kindness, we become healthier and our immune system is strengthened. But the truth is, even by absorbing another person's kindness, we grow. We become better people. We are learning, and that is an illustration that we can change this world. But again, learning from children. Because children are the most important people in this world, and they give us the lesson of kindness every day by forgiving each other, by playing with each other. And with this thought, I invite you to pray. Oh God, we ask you to bless us all today, to give us a sense of connectedness through love and compassion, and especially kindness. Kindness that teaches us so many ways to treat each other in a different way, better than maybe we tried before. Teach us, O God, other gifts of the Spirit, and kindness of them does not make us weak. Kindness makes us stronger and more confident in the future. Bless us all, O God, in the name of Christ.